So today I want to walk you through the process of how we take our brainstorming list and turn it into a planner, and then how we take our planner and turn that into some body paragraphs. So here's my idea with the word flesh. And so what I did is I made a whole list of ways of using the word flesh. And some of this I already knew on my own, and then I had to do some research. As I said, writing number two takes a lot of legwork. To be successful, you've got to do a lot of legwork. I know I needed around 10 definitions, but I went longer than that. And so I want to make sure I have plenty of ways of using the word, and then I can then pull out my favorites. And I like that much better than having to really scrape the bottom of the barrel to kind of figure out, like, can I make this essay work? So I have a lot of different ways of using it. So when I started looking at my different ways of using the word flesh, I started thinking about how I could group this. And this is going to take my brainstorming list and look at it and say, okay, how can I group these words together? And so when I took my list, I then changed it over to my planner. Let me show you what my planner looks like, everybody. So here's my planner. And so right here, I'll see if I can get, maybe I'll go over here. There we go. What I wrote is I wrote down the word flesh as my word, and I start off my most basic definition. So when I hear the word flesh, I immediately think of the word skin. So that was going to be my most basic definition. So I wrote that down here. And then I started grouping things. And so I noticed a couple things in the way that I looked at my list, and I noticed that some of my definitions had to do with like the outside. And so I had all these definitions had to do with the outside. And so I kind of colored them yellow on my list. And so I kind of put them all here. And this is all outside. So I'm just going to write the word outside. And what I mean by that is this is all ways of looking at sort of the surface outside, sort of the phoniness of flesh. So this is skin. This is being the phrase in the flesh, to press the flesh, flesh wounds. All these things have to do with just things on the surface, but there's not much depth to these. And then down here, which should say group 2 instead of group 3, this was more inside. And so I know it's hard to see because it's real small. But I started finding all these definitions that had to do with things on the inside. That flesh had to do with fleshy fruit, which is sort of like the pulp in the inside of of an orange. That make your flesh crawl is not about really the outside, but making you inside feeling kind of creepy. Things that are not bone are called soft tissue and called flesh. So there are a lot of these things have to do with things being inside. Flesh is oftentimes looked at as being your human nature, your sin. The biblical quote, "the flesh is weak," is once again not about your skin being weak, but what's inside of you. Our nature is very weak. And so this is all about sort of the inside. And I thought that's really interesting because I thought that was a nice contrast to this other part about being on the outside. I did have some anomalies. In the middle here, I'm going to put anything which doesn't fit into any of my categories. I may not use them, or I may use them, but I'm going to put them here and simply say, look, if I want to bring them in somehow, I might, but they may not necessarily fit. So now as I start looking at it, I say, okay, do I have a group 3? And I don't. I just had 2 groups, and I thought that was plenty. And now what I want to do is I want to start thinking about my point. And my point of this thing, I'll see if I can get this to move down. I don't think it will. Oh my gosh, it did. How about that? So my point was, overall, it's down here. So I'm going to write, what point do I want to reach? I want to reach the fact that I believe that the truth of who we are is inside. I know that might sound very trite and overused, but I do believe it's true. And I don't think the truth is on the outside. I think who you truly are is on the inside. And I think we're very quick to judge the outside. Very quick to judge the outside, when really it's the inside that really matters. It's the inside is where our true values reside. And that's the point I want to drive to. So if I want to get to this point about the value of the inside, I want to get there right before I get to my conclusion. So as I scroll back up here, what I want to do is I want to draw some arrows. I want to try to show myself some logic of how I'm going to build this essay. Well, I'm going to start off with my most basic definition so that my reader kind of knows what I'm talking about. So I'm going to talk about skin. Then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to take on the outside. I may not be able to use every single one of those definitions, but I have a nice list to kind of see if I can maybe gather maybe around 200 words. And then after I get 200 words on talk about how flesh on the outside and what that means, then I'm going to come down here and take on the inside. And once again, take on about 200 words. And then that's going to lead me to my conclusion. Think about it. If I want to conclude about the value of the inside, I don't want to start there. I want to lead the reader logically through my reasoning and say, okay, here's skin, which is what you think of when you think of flesh. Let's talk about the skin and flesh on the outside, and then take you into the inside and a little deeper idea about skin, and then arrive at the deeper point. And that's how I'm going to flow my essay. So this is how we use the planner as a way of logically leading the reader to where we want to arrive. And so what's most important is for you to understand what your conclusion is going to be. Take your time to develop that conclusion. Once I develop that conclusion, then I can say, cool, now I know my conclusion. How am I going to get there? So last thing I'll show you then is my essay. And so my essay is going to basically kind of walk me through that process. I don't have an introduction yet. I simply have the very basics of the outside about flesh, and then I just start on the inside of flesh. So let's see what we can do with this. So, no, I'm going to pause my video and make a second part because my video might be too long.